Today we're going to make the LoneStar, the small LoneStar. I believe it's called the Migrating LoneStar. Just want to go over, make the block. You're going to have, from the strip of foundations in the pattern, you're going to cut 8 units like this. This is what we call one blade. They're all the same, but you want to cut them apart, and we'll just work with one section at a time. I have my fabrics lined up over here, A, B, C, D, E. The foundation tells you which fabric to put in which space. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take a fabric piece, A, and we're going to set our foundation on top. They're labeled. This is row 1, piece 1, fabric A. This is row 2, and this is row 3. So we're going to just concern ourselves with row 1 first, piece number 1. And I believe all of our pieces are cut 4.5 inches long by 2 inches wide. That's the size to cut all the pieces for your blades, the blades for the LoneStar. And what I like to do is, normally we would set fabric piece number 1 the way we want it to go and put a pin in it. What I do, because of the odd shape and the flipping and the way we have to trim between the rows, I like to tack it down. So I have the wrong side of the fabric facing up. I have my foundation block set so that row 1, space 1, fabric A is over top of the fabric, the wrong side of the fabric. You want to put about 1/4 of an inch of fabric past the line between space 1 and space 2. What you're doing is you're setting it so you have your first seam allowance, so you know where to place the next piece. And we also want to make sure that this fabric goes out to the dotted line on the other 3 sides of space number 1. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just run a line of stitching between the solid line and the broken line to hold this in place, because you're going to be doing flipping and trimming, and you don't want this to accidentally get trimmed where it should not be. So that will be just fine like that. And I like to clip my threads, keep things nice and neat. So there we have piece number 1 set. And when you're doing this block, it's always good to have it set so you're working from the bottom up. That way, every time your placement of your fabric, of your next piece of fabric, will always be the same. So now we're going to turn it over so we have the right side of the fabric facing up. Let me go back just a second. When it's like this, when you set the foundation on top of the fabric, you want to be able to read the printing. This is the right side of the foundation, and you're going to do all your sewing and all your trimming from this side. And you're looking through the foundation to the wrong side of your fabrics. So now we'll turn that over, and we're going to take fabric piece number 2, and we're going to put right sides together, and we're going to set fabric piece number 2 with the top left corner of the fabric right next to the broken line on the left side. I know this looks funny, but when you open it up, it will cover the whole space. If you did it like this, opened it up, whoops, you got all that there that's not covered. Always, when you're working from the bottom of the row up, it's always going to get set top left corner of your fabric piece that you're adding goes right against or right next to the broken line on the left. So now we're going to turn, I put a pin down here because we're going to be sewing up here and you don't want to sew over your pin. And then we're going to turn it over and we're going to sew on this line between space 1 and space 2. And you use a regular stitch length, whatever you use in your traditional piecing, you can use here. You don't need to back stitch, and you're just going to sew on the line. Sewing on the line is what gives you the accuracy. That's why it's very important that you sew on the line, so when you join these rows, your points of your diamonds are going to meet. And the goal is to stitch on the line so that after you've stitched, you can't see the black printing. I'm off just slightly, but it will be okay. And then you want to set your stitches, and then we're going to open this up and we're going to press it. And then we're going to take, that's step 2. I call this a 3-step process. Stitching is step 1, pressing is step 2, then we're going to trim, and that's step 3. We're going to trim to get ready to go back to step number 1 of stitching. So this is space number 2, this is space number 3. So we want to cut that extra fabric down to 1/4 inch. One of the reasons we trim down to 1/4 inch is all the sizes of the fabrics are based on putting it on a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And the second reason is you just don't want to have extra fabric in your block. It just adds extra weight and bulk, and you don't need that. So there we've trimmed. Let me go back and show you. You're going to line up your straight edge even with the line you're going to stitch on next, where you're going to add your next piece. And you only worry about trimming for the next piece, just that one. And then, so you line this up along the stitching line, fold this back, and hold it back. Then use your add 1/4 ruler. It just hooks on your straight edge, and trim away any extra fabric. So there is our 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now when we turn it over, we're going to take fabric piece C, and again, we're going to take the top left corner of this fabric that we're adding, and we're going to set it right next to the broken line on the left. Put a pin back away from where you're going to be sewing, and we're going to turn it over, and we're going to stitch on that line. And it's really good if you have an open toe foot so you can actually see where your needle is stitching. Go all the way out on this one to the broken line. And I do like to keep my threads trimmed. And then step number 2 is to press it. You want to set your seams so you don't have a ridge of thread to fold over. And now at the end of the row, row 1 is complete. We're going to do the same thing up here in the seam allowance. We're just going to run a line of stitching between the solid line and the broken line. Okay, now that that row's done, we're going to trim this long along here, we're going to use our add a quarter ruler again. Our straight edge right along this seam line. When we join row 2 to row 1, that is going to be our seam line. So we want to cut these corners off, cut it down to 1/4 inch. So we just put our straight edge on there, our add a quarter onto our straight edge, and trim away those corners. So there you have your 1/4 inch seam allowance ready for after we cover number 2, and we're going to sew them together. Okay, so now we're going to start with row number 2. Row number 2 starts up at the top, and it's designed that way so that your seam allowances will go in opposite directions to help alleviate any big bulky spots. It'll make it better. So this is row 2, space 1, fabric D. We'll take fabric D, and we're going to start just like we did at the on the other one. Only now I'm going to turn it around because I like to work from the bottom of the row. We're going to set it just like this. So we have about 1/4 inch going past the line between space 1 and space 2. And then I'm going to just take it to, you want to make sure that it covers all the way out to the dotted line. I'm just going to run a line of stitching, and you'll see why when we complete this row. You'll see why we do that. Okay, so now, again, I turned it so that I'm working from the bottom of the row and going to go up. The next one is fabric C. And again, top left corner of this piece goes right down by the dotted line, broken line. Put a pin back over here to hold it in place. Makes it easier to get to the bed of the sewing machine. Turn it over so the foundation's up, and we're going to sew right on that line. And you start where the line starts and stop where the line stops. Take your pin out. That was step number 1. Step number 2 is to press. Don't worry about this little hole here. That's extra foundation. It's not going to affect, there won't be a hole in your block. Okay, so we did number 2, number 3. We're going to put our straight edge along that seam line between space 2 and space 3 and fold this back. This is why we have the fabric stitched to the foundation. If it was not stitched to the foundation, it would be laying on out here. So when you put your add a quarter down, this fabric would be there. You'd end up cutting it off. So that's why we attach the top and bottom to the foundation. It's very important. Okay, this is fabric B. And again, like every other piece, top left corner goes down by the dotted line. Top left corner of the piece I'm adding, this piece here, goes right by that broken line. Turn it over and stitch on the line. Now when I put my needle down, if it wasn't right on the line where I wanted it, of course I would lift it up and move the foundation so that the stitches would be on the line. Where's my thread here? Okay, so we've got row number 2, all the fabric stitched on. And before I do anything else, I'm going to run a line of stitching. When you do this, you want to make sure that it's nice and flat. You don't want to distort your block. Now we need to trim both sides of row 2, the long sides. So we're going to put our straight edge along this line and fold this back. Use our add a quarter ruler. Trim that side. And then while I'm doing this, I like to just do the other side as well. Okay, now at this point, you can join these two together if you want, or you can cover row 3 and then join that to 2, join 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. For right now, I'm going to fold this over. I want to join this, show you how to join this. So ideally, if you fold it on that line, there's a solid line between the 2 broken lines. I don't know if you can see it there. That's a fold line. If you fold it right on that line, I like to set it on my ironing mat. And you can see through it, so you can see that your broken lines lie right on top of each other. And if you press it, it will help to keep it all together where it should be. Okay, now we need to match our points. First thing I do is I put a pin in at this point and make sure it comes out at that point. I hold it tight and put the pin in like that. Then we're going to come down to this first point, and I like to put the pin in right at the seam, but on the side of the seam where it's just a single layer and opposite your seam allowance. Put it through, and I like to bring it up right next to the seam, just like that, on the side of the seam. Where am I here? Right here. And then I hold my pin straight and I grab another pin. I don't want to distort it. I don't want to rock the pin, because if you rock the pin, you're going to move the front one up and the bottom piece down. And then till you get real used to doing this, I put a pin in the middle to make sure that my seam lines are lined up. And then we're going to come down and do the same thing down here. Hold that pin straight across. And then if you want to make sure that your seams line up. And then we're going to match our end point where the two solid lines come together right here, right even with that point down there. Okay, now we're going to sew on the solid line, and you line it up. You're going to start sewing at the bottom where the top where the broken line is. And you're just going to sew on that solid line. And until you get real comfortable, you don't have to go real fast. You want to be accurate on your line, though. All the way out to the broken line. And then the secret. That looks pretty good. And that one looks pretty good. See if that's, whoops, there, yep, those are great. Okay, now what I do is I either take my seam ripper or a pair of scissors and I just run it along the fold of the foundation, slit it open so I can press my seams open. I really like to press them open. It alleviates any big hunks of bulk. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish this one, and then I'm going to make another one. And, oh, those points look great. Beautiful. And then I want to show you how to do your set-in seams. So I'll be back.